Hi, boys and girls. I want to talk to you a little bit about choosing the object to tell your story. Now, Terry Greaves used her beadwork. That's how she started when she was a very little girl with her mother. I also have a connection with needles and thread. Now, her needles and thread held beads, but my needles and threads put together fabric. Maybe you have some sort of way that your family tells history, your family history or your culture. I want you to think about that very much. Maybe ask grandparents or your mom and dad where you came from, where your family came from, your religion, your culture, your holidays, your foods, all of those pieces that make you who you are. Now, this is a quilt that was made by my great-grandmother, and it's made from fabric from her grandchildren, from her children, from old clothes that nobody needed anymore. And she would cut them up, and this one was a pretty cool pattern, a little more difficult than just using squares. And one thing that I love about this is I can see her stitches. So I can actually see the stitches that she made. This is all made by hand. You can see it's getting a little bit worn in some places. We don't actually use it as a blanket anymore because it is so old. It's more of a cherished family heirloom. And there's lots of different colors, lots of different fabrics. And even my mom can pick out, oh, I remember that was from my pair of pants. So it tells a story about our family. Now, when my daughter was coming and I knew it was going to be a girl, I decided I would make a quilt for her. And it's a beautiful quilt, but it has a lot of meaning to it. And that's what I want you to start thinking about, is how can you assign meaning to an object? That's what our artist did. So she used her techniques from her family to create meaning. So for me, I used fabrics just like my grandmother. I used fabrics that are important to me. So not everything is a fabric from someone. I did use some other fabrics to tie it together. But this fabric right here, my father has passed away, and this fabric right here is from one of his shirts. So all of this light blue is from his shirts. This right here, this fabric here, is from a quilt that I made for my mother, and it's hanging in her house. So this is a connection to my mother, this is a connection to my father, and then someone who was very important in my life was my grandmother. And I used a lot of fabric from her. This right here is a shirt from her. You can see it echoed here. And any of the flowers, all of these flowers are from her sheets that I would have sleepovers at her house, and I saved them and I have put them into this quilt. On the back of the quilt, for the backing, I did a piece from the sheets. And one little funny story is this was actually, there's a seam down the middle. So I could have used a whole sheet, but in the middle of the sheet, right in the middle, there was a stain. My father had fallen asleep with a highlighter, the bright yellow highlighter, and it actually stained the sheet. And I didn't know if I should put it in there or not put it in there, but I decided I would cut out the stain. So the reason why I had to make a seam down the middle was I had to actually put two pieces together to cut out that stain in the middle. But it is kind of special to know that little story behind the fabric. So it is just an object, but it's also kind of more than just an object. Another thing that is kind of special, I remember I mentioned that my dad has passed away. I have some of his hats, and one of the neat thing about my dad is he loved to find out where we came from. And I don't know if you can tell, but on the inside of the brims of his hats, he would write certain names or nicknames and certain lettering. So this is Philadelphia, and our family has a lot of roots in Philadelphia, a lot of ancestors from going all the way back. So these are all different names and how we are connected to Philadelphia. So think about everyday objects, blankets, shoes, hats. Think about everyday objects that you can actually add artwork to and make this your own. So remember, I want you to enjoy and stay creative.